Why did the old Marine stop breathing that morning, right as the echo of a single rifle shot rolled across the Montana Valley? Colonel James Ghost had seen everything there was to see in 50 years of soldiering. Desert wars, hostage rescues, operations that never made it into headlines. But that sound, sharp, clean, final, hit him differently. It wasn't the shot of a student or a casual marksman. It was the kind of shot that rewrote the rules of physics. He leaned into the spotting scope from the observation tower of range, eyes narrowing against the sun. 3 targets stood downrange, each a steel silhouette spaced across 1,700 yards of open terrain. He'd watched countless students try that exercise. None had ever made it beyond the first. But this time he saw it happen. The bullet struck the first target, center mass, then punched straight through it as if the steel were made of paper. It continued, impossibly, maintaining velocity across another 2 football fields before slicing into the second target. And then, as if guided by some unseen hand, it carried on, reaching the third. 3 hits, 1 bullet. They fell like synchronized dominoes, perfect, silent, impossible. His hands tightened on the armrests of his chair until the knuckles turned white. 70 years of life, 42 of them in uniform, had taught him to trust his eyes. But not this. "That's not possible," he whispered. Downrange, a woman stood up from her prone firing position. Sunlight caught the copper strands of her hair as she removed her headset and looked up toward the tower. She didn't salute, didn't smile broadly, didn't pose. Just a small, knowing curve of the lips, as if to say, "Yes, you saw that right." Colonel froze. The name on the briefing file hadn't prepared him for her. He had just witnessed something that broke every law of marksmanship he had spent his life teaching. And to understand how, he'd have to go back 48 hours, to when it all began. 2 days earlier, a government SUV climbed the winding mountain road toward the Range Advanced Marksmanship Center's legacy project, his creation, his pride. He sat in the back seat, flipping through a thin file folder marked classified. The file wasn't thick, barely a dozen pages, but the name on the cover carried weight: Morgan. The driver, a young Marine sergeant, broke the silence. "First time back to in what, sir? 7 years. Didn't look up, 8. Outside, the pine forest thinned, revealing the facility sprawling across the valley like a fortress of glass and steel. It was bigger now. New ranges, new tech, but still the same heartbeat beneath it, the same purpose: to produce the most precise, disciplined snipers the U.S. military could create. When the SUV stopped, a younger officer approached with a crisp salute. "Colonel, sir, Lieutenant Colonel Michael, it's an honor to have you back." "At ease," replied. "Class of '03, right?" Smiled faintly. "You never forget a student, do you, sir?" "Not the good ones," said. The tour was efficient and clinical. New Sabre 3 target systems, AI-assisted ballistic simulations, climate chambers replicating any condition from Arctic to desert. Listened, but his mind was elsewhere. The Secretary of Defense didn't summon retired Marines for nostalgia. Something had happened here, something extraordinary. When they reached his office, coffee waited on the desk. But as soon as the door shut, the younger man's tone changed. "Sir, thank you for coming on short notice. We've got something that doesn't make sense. We needed someone who'd understand what we were looking at." Folded his arms. The secretary said only that my expertise was required. "Start talking." Hesitated, then inserted a thumb drive into his computer and turned the screen toward him. 3 weeks ago, one of our instructors began achieving results that defy explanation. The video played grainy range footage, a single shooter in prone position. The timestamps jumped forward, every few minutes another shot, another perfect hit. 2,000-yard shots through crosswinds, moving targets at impossible ranges, groupings so tight they blurred together. Leaned in. That grouping, under a quarter-inch at 1,800 yards, he muttered. That's beyond our calibration limits. Exactly, said. She's not missing, not once. She looked up. Nodded. Morgan, former FBI counterterrorism, civilian contractor now. And she's doing things we can't replicate even with AI-assisted targeting. Frowned. The shooter's identity aside, the technique. You said it matches a protocol. Yes, sir, replied quietly. Something called Ghost 7. The words hit like a gut punch. His jaw clenched. That's not possible. You recognize it. It was theoretical, said, voice tight. A sequence I designed in the 90s, 7 shots, 7 precise eliminations to collapse an enemy command in seconds. But it required superhuman processing speed. No one could ever execute it. Hesitated. Well, she has. Silence filled the room. The only sound was the quiet hum of the laptop fan. Finally said, I want her file, the complete one, and I want to meet her today. She's expecting you, said. East Range, 1 hour. The East Range sprawled across the Montana wilderness like a cathedral of precision. Long firing lanes stretching to the horizon, the air clean and razor-sharp. When arrived, he spotted her instantly. Alone, focused, a figure bent over a rifle that gleamed under the morning light. Morgan, he said as he approached. She looked up calm, unhurried. Her eyes were blue, not the soft kind, but the cutting kind, calculating, alive. Colonel, she said, standing, her grip was firm. Your reputation precedes you. As does yours, apparently, he replied, scanning her weapon. MK-22 and Bender optic, custom trigger. 2-pound pull. Zero creep, she said with a faint smile. Modified it myself. He studied her setup, every tool perfectly aligned. Even her mat was positioned like geometry. Says you've done something remarkable. He mentioned Ghost 7. I have. That's impossible, said flatly. She reached into her bag and handed him a worn leather notebook. His heart stopped. His initials were embossed in the corner. It was his journal from 1998, containing every theoretical calculation he'd ever written, including Ghost 7. Where did you get this? His tone sharpened. Afghanistan, 2011, she said softly. You left it behind when you evacuated me from that Taliban compound. His mind raced back to the mission, Operation Dagger's Edge, a rescue of an FBI agent half dead from torture. He remembered the blood, the sand, the chaos. That was you. Yes, she said simply. You don't remember me, I don't blame you. I was barely alive. She looked at the journal again. You used these calculations to guide the rescue. I kept it safe. For 14 years I studied it, refined it, and then perfected it. Ghost 7 isn't possible, he insisted. Maybe not when you wrote it, she said, but time changes things. Stared at her, unsure whether to admire her or be afraid of her. I want to see it, he said finally. Tomorrow morning, she replied. 0700, she smiled faintly. I'll bring the weather. That night in his quarters, sat under the dim lamp, the old journal open before him. His own handwriting stared back at him, calculations of wind drift, humidity, spin drift, all culminating in one impossible formula, G7. He dreamed of a marksman who could collapse an entire enemy network with 7 precisely ordered shots. The math had worked. The human part hadn't. Until now. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. What kind of mind had taken his theory and turned it into reality? He opened the second file had given him, her dossier. Morgan, top of her class recruited into FBI counterterrorism, field operative in Afghanistan, captured, presumed dead, rescued. 2 years of rehab, returned to service, later left to work in private sector training. There was no record of advanced military sniper training, no record of what she'd done in the years between leaving the Bureau and arriving at The video on his tablet caught his attention, a recent recording of her range session. He pressed play. Through the camera lens, she was motionless calm, each breath deliberate, each shot perfect. It wasn't just accuracy, it was art. The rifle didn't seem like a weapon in her hands, it seemed alive. He watched the footage 3 times before turning it off. He'd seen prodigies before, students born for the trigger, but this was something different. There was stillness in her, like someone who'd seen death and learned to listen to it. Sleep didn't come easy that night. And when it did, it brought back a memory. A young woman, barely conscious, her hand gripping his arm as his team carried her to the helicopter. Her lips moved against the roar of rotors, whispering something he couldn't hear. Now, 14 years later, he wondered what she had been trying to tell him. The dawn that awaited him would answer more than he ever wanted to know. Why was she so calm when every man on that range held his breath? The sun hadn't cleared the mountains yet when Colonel reached the East Range. A thin frost still clung to the ground, the kind that turned every sound into something sharper. He expected nerves, arrogance, something from Morgan. Instead, he found a quiet woman adjusting the windage dial of her rifle as though she were tuning a musical instrument. "Morning, Colonel," she said without looking up. Her tone was neutral, unhurried, like she already knew what he'd come to see. He approached, watching how her hands moved. No wasted motion, no twitch. Even her posture, relaxed but precise, carried a discipline he couldn't teach. "I reviewed your file," he said. "Impressive credentials for an FBI agent, but nothing that explains how you developed this level of marksmanship." She smiled faintly. "My father was a competitive shooter. He taught me when I was 8. I earned my distinguished rifleman badge at 16, but that was just the foundation." "And Ghost 7, he asked. "That wasn't in any FBI manual." She loaded a round into the chamber, then looked up at him. "Ghost 7 isn't just about bullets, Colonel. It's about presence. You focused on the mechanics, the math, the wind, the sequence, but you never explored the mental state behind it." "The mental state," he almost scoffed. "Yes," she said, voice even. "Ghost 7 isn't a pattern, it's a state of being. The shooter doesn't fire 7 shots, they become the shots. Every calculation, every variable, every beat of their heart synchronized. Mind, body, weapon, and bullet moving as one." Crossed his arms. "That sounds like mysticism, not marksmanship." "Then watch," she said softly. The range officers went silent as she settled prone behind her rifle. The air stilled. Even the birds seemed to stop, felt a strange tightness in his chest as she began to breathe, slowly, rhythmically. Through his binoculars, he saw her shoulders rise, then fall. "Target 1, 800 yards, voice crackled over the radio. She fired dead center. "Target 2, 1,000. The shot came almost before finished speaking, another perfect hit. "Target 3, 1,200 moving laterally." She tracked it for barely 3 seconds, then squeezed the trigger. The steel plate jerked backward with a clang that echoed across the valley. One by one, the challenges increased. Distance, crosswind, moving targets, variable light. Each time she adjusted almost imperceptibly, then hit dead center. No hesitation, no recalculation, just flow. Skepticism began to erode, replaced by something he didn't expect: respect. "Final sequence announced. Ghost 7 demonstration." Rolled onto her back, closed her eyes, and whispered something too low to hear. When she turned back toward the rifle, something had changed. Her movements weren't mechanical anymore. They were fluid, intuitive. "Beginning sequence," she murmured. What happened next didn't seem human. 7 targets, 7 distances, 7 environmental variables. She fired 7 shots in less than 30 seconds. Each bullet found its mark, not by luck, not by chance, but with deliberate surgical precision. When she finally lifted her head, her expression was calm, almost detached. That's the foundation, she said quietly. Tomorrow I can show you its true potential. Couldn't speak. For a man who had trained hundreds of snipers, invented half the techniques they used, and held the record for the longest kill in Desert Storm, he suddenly felt obsolete. He turned away, trying to hide it. I've seen enough for today. But her voice stopped him. Colonel, there's something else you should know. He turned back. Malik Rahman, she said softly, he's alive. The name froze him in place. That was impossible. Rahman was the Taliban commander responsible for her capture, the same man they thought had died in the air strike during her rescue. How do you know that? Because he's been hunting me ever since, and by extension, you. She stepped closer, her tone level but urgent. He wants Ghost 7, Colonel, and he knows we're the only two people on Earth who understand it. A cold wind swept across the range, felt a tremor beneath the surface of her words, a warning that went deeper than fear. That night he didn't sleep. He sat alone in his quarters, reviewing the data from the demonstration. Wind speed, angle, muzzle velocity, all textbook perfect, but that didn't explain how she did it. Because no one, no matter how skilled, been able to execute Ghost 7 in under 30 seconds. He played the footage again. On the third replay, he noticed something. Her breathing pattern. It wasn't normal. It synced, a rhythm matching the intervals between shots, almost like she was timing her heartbeat to the trigger pull. He wrote a note on his pad, psychophysiological control, then scratched it out. That wasn't enough. There was something deeper. A knock at the door interrupted him. Entered, eyes grave. Sir, we've got a situation. Satellite imagery just picked up movement around the facility perimeter. Multiple vehicles, unmarked. How many? At least 3 teams of 4 to 6. They've disabled our sensors on the north and east boundaries. His instincts flared to life. Rahman, he muttered. Blinked, you know who's behind this. Miss Morgan warned me. He stood up, all traces of age gone from his posture. Wake the security team, quietly. Evacuate all non-essential personnel, and lock down the range. Yes, sir. Grabbed his sidearm and strode toward the door. The years fell away with every step. The old soldier wasn't retired anymore. When he reached his quarters, she opened the door before he could knock. They're coming, she said simply. How did you know? I've been waiting for them. Her room looked less like living quarters and more like an armory, rifles, tactical gear, ammunition laid out in perfect order. I'm sorry, Colonel, she added quietly. I used you as bait, but it was the only way to bring him out of hiding. He stared at her, torn between fury and admiration. You deliberately brought this down on us. Yes, but now we end it on our terms. Why me, he asked. Because you're James Ghost, the man he hates most, and because you're the only person alive who can help me finish this. Studied her face. Beneath the calm was exhaustion, years of running, hiding, preparing. He saw it now. This wasn't arrogance. It was survival. Tell me everything, he said. She took a slow breath. After you rescued me, they said I'd never walk again. I proved them wrong, but something changed in me. Trauma rewires the brain, Colonel. My captivity broke something and rebuilt something else. Her voice softened. I learned to enter a state where time slows, every sound, every movement crystal clear. That's the foundation of Ghost 7, not calculation, clarity. He listened, feeling a strange ache in his chest. 14 years, she continued. That's how long I've trained, studied, tested. I've built a system around it, a full combat doctrine, but it's not just about precision, it's about control. Psychological, physiological, emotional. She reached into a small case and pulled out a bullet, just the projectile, polished end. The first bullet you fired during my rescue, she said. It killed his lieutenant. It's the moment my life started again. Why keep it? Asked. To remind me that resurrection comes with a cost. For the first time, he saw the scar running along her jaw, the quiet evidence of what she'd survived. He realized Ghost 7 wasn't born in a lab or a classroom. It was born in pain. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley, a storm building. "They'll hit before dawn," she said. 3 hours, maybe less. Nodded slowly, "Then we prepare." She hesitated. "There's one more thing you need to understand about Ghost 7. The true power isn't in one shooter, it's in two, working in absolute synchronization. One as spotter, one as shooter, or both, switching seamlessly." "That wasn't in my theory," he said. "No, that's my innovation." She met his gaze. "I need a partner, Colonel." He laughed dryly. "I'm too old for fairy tales, Miss Morgan." "Then it's a good thing this one's war," she said. Her tone was steady, but her eyes held something deeper. Hope, maybe, or defiance. The mission was forming itself, piece by piece. The storm, the enemy, the protocol. And for the first time in years, felt alive. He glanced toward the window, where lightning flashed against the distant peaks. 3 hours till dawn," he said quietly. "Show me what I need to know." She nodded. "Meet me at the East Ridge in 20 minutes. As he left the room, her voice followed him through the dark hall. "Colonel, you said Ghost 7 was impossible." He paused, glancing back. "Sometimes," she said, loading her rifle, "the impossible just needs the right kind of pain." Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and gun oil. The night around range thickened into something electric: anticipation, fear, purpose. The facility that had once been a place of training was now becoming a battlefield. And as lightning illuminated the valley below, realized what this truly was: not an inspection, not an evaluation. It was destiny catching up. What kind of soldier prepares for a battle she already knows she might not survive? The wind howled through the pines as the storm rolled in from the northwest. It was the kind of storm old Marines called ghost weather, gray, cold, and strangely quiet between bursts of thunder. Colonel and Morgan moved through the dark toward the eastern ridge, their silhouettes flickering in lightning flashes. Each step felt heavier than the last. The range below looked almost peaceful: rows of training buildings, firing lanes, and floodlights glowing against the valley floor. But in that peace, danger was closing in. By the time they reached the ridge, rain had begun to fall, sharp and cold as needles. "This is it," whispered, crouching beside a rocky depression. "Best line of sight over the valley, perfect firing angles to every approach. Scan the terrain through night vision. You've planned this out." "I had to," she said. "I've known he'd come eventually." The ridge gave them cover and elevation, overlooking the main access road below. Set up communications equipment while she laid out her weapons with surgical precision: her modified Mk-22 sniper rifle and a backup M110 semi-automatic. Every magazine was labeled by range and wind adjustment, every round hand-loaded. She wasn't just ready, she was waiting. Voice crackled over the secure comms link from the command center. "Colonel, we've evacuated all non-essential personnel. Skeleton crew remains: 8 security, 4 range officers, 12 admin. Defensive positions established. Still no response from the Guard or FBI field office. Storms knocked out long-range comms." "Understood," said. "Hold position, keep internal channels open. We're on the ridge." Lightning flickered across the valley, illuminating the storm-swollen clouds. "They'll use the weather," murmured. "Cut our visibility, mask their approach." Adjusted his binoculars. "He studied our doctrine. He'll come at us sideways, quiet, coordinated. He'll disable sensors first." "That's exactly what he'll do," she said. For a long time they sat in silence, just the sound of wind and distant thunder, the calm before something inevitable. Finally spoke. "You said you studied my journal for years. What did you really learn from it?" She didn't look up from her scope. That you understood something most soldiers never do, that war isn't about power, it's about control. You can't outmuscle chaos, Colonel, you have to shape it. He smirked faintly. You sound like a philosopher. I learned from the best, she said, and for the first time there was a trace of warmth in her voice. Then she added softly, and from the worst. He looked at her profile, calm, focused, haunted. Ramen. She nodded. He believed fear was a weapon sharper than any blade. He taught me what happens when you let your mind fracture. I decided to make mine unbreakable. A moment passed, then she said, I spent 3 weeks chained in a basement in Kandahar. He thought he broke me, but what he really did was strip away everything unnecessary. Doubt, hesitation, noise. She turned toward him. That's Ghost 7, the silence that remains when all fear is gone. Felt a chill that had nothing to do with the wind. He'd seen courage, he'd seen endurance, but this was something else. She wasn't fearless because she didn't feel fear. She was fearless because she had lived through worse. A sudden flash in the distance caught his eye, infrared movement through the tree line. Small groups, disciplined spacing. Contact, whispered. North perimeter, multiple heat signatures, they're here. He pressed his comms. We've got movement on the north side. 3 teams, possibly more. Disable exterior lights. Keep your men low. Copy that, sir, replied. Security repositioning now. Was already behind her rifle, adjusting her optic. 3 teams of 5. Classic insertion pattern. Civilian vehicles, military discipline. Ramen style, said. Exactly. Lightning cracked again, revealing a fleeting image of figures moving through rain. Then darkness swallowed them. They'll breach in less than 10 minutes, she said. Checked his sidearm, the motion instinctive, like slipping back into an old skin. We'll hold them here. Once they engage the main compound, we execute Ghost 7. Turned her head slightly. Together. Together, he echoed. The word carried more weight than it should have. Minutes stretched thin, thunder rolled overhead, then movement. Muffled gunfire echoed faintly across the valley, short, disciplined bursts, no panic, no shouting, just precision. Voice came through again, breath tight. Sir, contact confirmed. They've breached north and east fences, moving toward power grid and communications hub. They're cutting our eyes and ears first, said, just like we do. His voice was calm, clinical. That's phase 1 of his pattern. He'll send his best men to secure the command center himself. He likes to finish things personally. Then that's where we'll find him. Not yet, she said. If we move too early, we lose surprise. Let them commit. Hesitated, watching the blips on his thermal scope. 3 teams moving in perfect formation. They weren't amateurs. They were trained, maybe better than most special ops units he'd seen in recent years. The idea of what Ramen could do with Ghost 7 in hands like these sent a shiver through him. How many do you think? He asked quietly. 3 teams of 6 minimum, maybe more waiting to move. 20 men, maybe 25, he said, against us and a handful of defenders. Numbers don't matter if they can't see where death's coming from, she replied. Something about the way she said it made him look at her differently, not as an instructor or survivor, but as something both terrifying and beautiful. A weapon carved from trauma and discipline. The comm crackled again. Colonel, command center perimeter breached. They've taken the bait and found it empty. My teams are falling back to the secondary post beneath the armory as planned. Good work, said. Keep casualties minimal. He looked at ready. She nodded, eyes fixed through the scope. Team 2 approaching the armory. If they get those weapons, it's over. He settled behind his rifle beside her. Then we start with them. She inhaled. 3 targets, I'll take lead. On your mark. Her breathing slowed until it almost stopped. Then in the space between lightning flashes, she whispered, 3, 2, 1. Her first shot cracked through the night, clean and final. A figure dropped near the armory entrance. Fired a second later, another target collapsing mid-stride. By the time the third man realized what was happening, his next round found his chest. Voice came through again. "Whoever's shooting out there, you just saved my team. Armory secure." "Good," said. "They'll shift to the comms building next. Be ready." Across the valley, another firefight erupted, brighter, louder, closer. They could see muzzle flashes strobing through the storm. "Team 3's inside the comms hub," she said. "If they destroy the backups, we're deaf." "Adjusted, take the one by the window. I'll handle the rear." Their rifles fired almost in unison, two brief flares in the dark. Both targets fell without a sound. The comms feed buzzed. "Teams 1 and 3 neutralized. Secondary command secure. Colonel, what's your status?" "Working," said, scanning for movement. "Raman hasn't shown himself yet. He's waiting to make sure the trap is real." Lightning flashed again, and in that instant they saw them. 5 figures moving along the access road toward the central building. One walked with the deliberate confidence of a man used to giving orders. "Found him," said quietly. "Raman." The name hung in the air like thunder waiting to break. She shifted slightly, tracking his movement. "He's coming straight for the command center. We've got maybe 5 minutes." "Then it's time," said. "We finish this." Rain beat harder against their gear as they checked their ammunition. The storm screamed around them, tearing through branches. The wind howled so loud it almost drowned out their breathing. But through it all she was steady, still. "This isn't about revenge," said suddenly. "I know," she replied. "You're sure?" She turned to him then, her voice quiet but sharp. "You think I want him dead because of what he did to me? No, I want him stopped because of what he'll do to everyone else if we don't." He nodded once. The conviction in her eyes was enough. Below them, the figures approached the command center. Men were nowhere in sight, just as planned. Raman believed he'd forced a retreat. He believed victory was seconds away. "Let him step inside," whispered. "Then we take his support teams apart." Smiled faintly. "You were always the student who stayed 10 steps ahead." "Maybe you just taught me too well," she said. As the attackers reached the building, the power cut across the compound. Total darkness swallowed everything. Only lightning illuminated the moment Raman's men breached the door. Then chaos. Gunfire erupted inside, shouts, grenades. "Phase 1 complete," she said, eyes still on her scope. "Now we collapse his command structure." Settled beside her, Ghost 7. "Ghost 7." Her voice was calm, but there was something else under it, something almost reverent. As thunder rolled overhead, realized this was no longer a test of theory. This was the execution of something larger than both of them. A doctrine born from a war he thought he'd left behind, perfected by the woman he'd once saved. She was the future, he was the ghost of the past. And together, they were about to rewrite the art of war. Why did it feel like time slowed, right before the first man died? The command center was dark, its walls pulsing with muzzle flashes. The storm outside screamed against the windows, rain turning to sheets of silver. Inside, the silence between gunfire was the loudest sound of all. From their ridge above the compound, Colonel and Morgan had the perfect vantage point. Each flash from below painted a picture: movement, chaos, panic. And through it all, the shape of Malik Raman, calm, deliberate, walking through the firefight like a conductor through a storm. "He's in," whispered. Adjusted her scope, the faint glow of her optic lighting her face. "He always walks into the center first. Control through proximity. That's how he leads." Her breathing slowed. "This is it, Colonel. Ghost 7, for real this time." He nodded once. 7 targets, 7 key nodes. "Sequence Alpha," she said quietly. "Command collapse protocol." The rain softened. almost respectfully as she began. Her first shot cut through the storm, one clean report that vanished into thunder. Through the scope, she saw the first man drop, a comms specialist carrying the encrypted radio system. He fell face first into the mud before he even realized he'd been hit. Fired half a second later. His round hit a second target, a breacher preparing to plant charges on the southern wall. The man's weapon clattered against the concrete as he fell. Two murmured, 5 left. They moved like twin ghosts, old soldier and survivor, no words wasted. Every calculation silent, every breath measured. Down below, confusion rippled through Ramon's men. Without their comms, their coordination fractured. They began shouting in different languages, signals breaking down, panic replacing precision. Target 3, western flank spotter with thermals, said. I see him. Her next shot was almost invisible, no hesitation, no correction. The spotter's lens shattered, his head snapping back. 3. North team regrouping, said, leader giving hand signals. I've got him. Her fourth shot punched through 2 layers of glass and steel, hitting center mass. 4. Thunder rolled over the valley. South team is retreating, said, eyes still behind his optic. They're not retreating, whispered. They're repositioning, watch the trucks. He shifted, scanning through the dark, his stomach tightened. They've got rocket tubes. They'll try to take out the ridge, she said. We've got 20 seconds. He didn't need to ask how she knew. They fired in unison, 2 shots that cracked together like one. The first man dropped, then the second. The third barely had time to turn before his round took him in the throat. Silence fell again, unnatural and heavy. The rain returned in a slow rhythm, hitting the dirt with the sound of ticking seconds. 6, said softly. Last one's Ramon. She looked through the scope. He stood in the open now, framed by the glow of the burning comms hub. Rain streaked across his face, but he didn't flinch. He just stood there, watching. He knows where we are, she said. I know. Ramon raised his weapon and fired. The round struck a rock near their position, sparks bursting into the rain. Didn't move. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger. I can end this, she said. Not yet, his tone was steady. Let him come closer. Closer means risk. It also means closure. She hesitated, then exhaled slowly. He's mine, Colonel, always was. He nodded, then take him. She steadied her breathing. The world around her slowed, sound fading, heartbeats stretching. Every raindrop seemed to hang in the air. In that stillness, she saw everything. The man who'd chained her to a basement wall, the man who'd laughed when she screamed, the man who'd taught her how to hate her own heartbeat. And now she taught him silence. The shot cracked. Ramon's body arched backward, the rifle falling from his hands as he crumpled to the ground. For a moment the entire valley went still. No thunder, no rain, just the echo of justice. 7, she whispered. Lowered his rifle, Ghost 7 complete. Her breathing came slow, measured, but there was something else in it, something breaking loose. Relief, or maybe release. Is it over? She asked quietly. He scanned the valley again. Smoke curled from burning vehicles. The enemy lay scattered across the mud, but something inside him refused to believe it was done. He looked at her. No, not yet. Because even in victory, there was always something unfinished. By dawn, the storm had cleared. The valley smelled of wet earth and gunpowder. Rescue helicopters finally arrived, 2 US-60s slicing through the morning light. Medical teams poured out, followed by a squad of Marines in combat gear. Met them halfway up the ridge, his face streaked with dirt and rain. Sir, we've secured the compound. 15 hostiles confirmed KIA, no survivors. Copy, said, his voice hoarse. Recover weapons and intel, full site lockdown. Nobody leaves until we're sure. Yes, sir. stood a few yards away watching the sunrise through a gap in the clouds. Her rifle lay across her chest, the barrel steaming faintly. She looked calm, but her eyes were far away. Walked over, stopping beside her. "You did good." She smiled faintly. "You always say that like it's supposed to mean something." "It does," he said. "It means you came back alive." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You know what I realized, Colonel? Every war ends, but some battles just change shape." He looked at her, "And this one?" She exhaled, shoulders relaxing. "This one feels like a door closing." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's time you opened a new one." She looked at him, genuinely surprised. "You think I can?" He smiled faintly. "You already did." They stood there as the sun broke fully over the ridge, casting long golden rays across the shattered range. It looked almost peaceful again, like nothing had ever happened. But peace was a fragile illusion. Because as the recovery team moved through the wreckage, one of them stopped. "Sir, you'll want to see this." Walked over. The Marine pointed at a blood trail leading away from where Raman had fallen. It disappeared into the forest beyond the range. Stomach tightened. He turned to who was already looking in that direction. "You said you hit him." "I did." "Then how the hell?" "Sometimes," she said softly, "evil gets a second wind." The words hung in the morning air like fog. She slung her rifle over her shoulder. "If he's still breathing, he won't make it far." Instinct said otherwise. Men like Raman didn't die easy. They carried their hate the way others carried faith. He put a hand on her shoulder. "We'll find him together." She hesitated. "You sure about that?" "I started this," he said. "I'm sure as hell going to finish it." For the first time she smiled, not the cold, distant one he'd seen before, but something real. "Then we hunt." Hours later, the helicopters lifted off, carrying the wounded and the fallen. The valley grew quiet again, save for the whisper of wind through the pines, and moved along the trail leading into the forest. Blood drops glistened on wet leaves, disappearing deeper into the trees. "Tracks are erratic," she said. "He's wounded bad, maybe lung shot." "Still dangerous," muttered. "Cornered men are unpredictable." "Then we'll just have to be unpredictable too." They followed the trail for nearly a mile before it stopped near a creek. There, the mud told another story. Someone else had been there. Tire treads, small, civilian. "He had help," she said. His jaw tightened. "Then this isn't over." She crouched, touching the edge of the tracks. "Eastbound, road to Helena, maybe further." He sighed, looking at the endless stretch of wilderness. "He'll vanish before we reach the highway." She stood, slinging her rifle again. "Then we make sure he can't." Her tone was final. Studied her face in the pale light filtering through the trees. There was exhaustion there, yes, but also purpose. "What happens when he's gone?" he asked quietly. "What's left for you then?" She paused, eyes distant. "Maybe nothing, maybe peace." He nodded slowly. "They're the same thing sometimes." They turned back toward the range, their boots heavy in the mud. The storm had passed, but the clouds still lingered on the horizon, thick and bruised, like the sky itself had taken a beating. As they reached the perimeter, met them. "Sir, DC is already asking for a full report. They want to debrief Miss Morgan separately." "Of course they do," muttered. "She just saved an entire military facility and executed a protocol they don't even admit exists." Gave him a knowing look. "You knew they'd come for me eventually." "I was hoping they'd wait longer," he said. "They won't," she replied. "People like me don't fit cleanly back into the system." His voice softened. "Then maybe it's time you stopped trying too." For a moment she said nothing. Then she took something from her pocket, a single round, engraved with a faint symbol. The same one he used to mark the theoretical ghost 7 diagrams all those years ago. She placed it in his hand. "Keep it, a reminder that even ghosts can learn to breathe again." He looked at it, then at her. Where will you go? She smiled faintly. Where I'm needed least, that's usually where trouble starts. As she turned to leave, the rising sun caught her face, half shadowed, half light. He called after her. She stopped. Why come back at all? Why bring this fight to me? Her answer was soft, but it carried through the wind. Because you once saved me, Colonel. I just returned the favor. Then she walked away, the forest swallowing her steps until she was gone. Stood there watching the horizon, the bullet heavy in his hand. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. Why couldn't peace ever last longer than a sunrise? By the time the sun reached the valley, the range lay quiet again. The smoke had thinned, leaving only the scent of cordite and wet earth. The world was still, but inside the silence something restless stirred. Colonel stood on the overlook, a mug of black coffee cooling in his hands, eyes fixed on the forest line where the blood trail had vanished hours earlier. He hadn't slept, couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, walking away into the trees like she was part of them. And he saw Ramon's body, except it wasn't there. He took a sip, the bitterness cutting through his exhaustion. You should stay dead, he muttered. Behind him approached. His uniform was mud-stained, eyes red from the night's chaos. Search teams swept the area. No sign of Ramon or any survivors. Tracks ended half a mile past the creek, nothing since. He didn't vanish, said quietly. He regrouped. Frowned. He's one man, sir. Wounded, probably dying. Turned to face him. You ever notice how people like that don't die when they're supposed to? Hesitated, then nodded slightly. Command wants you back in D.C. They're saying the situation's classified under a new directive. Operation closed. Of course it is, said, voice flat. They'll clean up the mess, bury the files, pretend it never happened. He set the mug down on the railing, eyes hard. But I was here, and I know what I saw. That woman just changed the laws of war, and they're afraid of her. Hesitated. You think they'll come after her? I think they'll come for her, said. The only question is who gets there first, our side or his. The road east out of was long and winding, cutting through the cold Montana wilderness. Morgan drove an unmarked Jeep, windows down, hair whipping in the wind. The forest blurred past in streaks of green and gold. For the first time in years, she wasn't heading to something, she was heading away. But she didn't feel free. Freedom, she'd learned, wasn't the absence of orders. It was the absence of ghosts, and she still had too many of those. The radio hummed softly with static, an old country station flickering in and out. Somewhere between verses, she caught herself glancing at the mirror more than once. Not for the road. For memories. Ramon's voice still lived somewhere in her head, cold and methodical. You can't kill what you've already become, Agent Morgan. She gripped the wheel. Watch me. The Jeep slowed near a gas station just outside a small town called Basin Creek. A trucker stood by his rig, smoking under the canopy, rain dripping from his hat. The kind of place nobody asked questions. She filled the tank, paid cash, then sat for a moment with the engine idling. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, motionless. There was a map on the passenger seat, creased, old school, the kind that didn't ping satellites. A red circle marked the town of Helena, and beneath it, a smaller one to the east, Ravine Point Airstrip. That's where Ramon was headed. She knew it as soon as she saw the tire tracks. If he'd survived, he'd head for extraction. And Ramon didn't believe in coincidences, only contingencies. Reached over, flipped open the glove box, and stared at the small leather-bound journal inside. Old notes, the original Ghost 7 equations. She hesitated, then tore out the final page, folded it, and slipped it into her pocket. The rest she burned. As the paper curled into ash, she whispered, "Some knowledge isn't meant to survive." She pulled back onto the highway. Bacat stood in the command center's debrief room. The monitors flickered with encrypted feeds, Pentagon officials on one screen, field officers on another. "Colonel," the voice from D.C. was sharp, bureaucratic. "You are to refrain from any further independent action regarding the Morgan situation. The Secretary will handle her reassignment personally." Folded his arms. "You mean containment." "Watch your tone, Colonel. You're still under contract." "Not for long," he said. The line went silent for a beat. Then, "We understand your personal investment, but this is a national security matter now. The Ghost 7 protocol is no longer your concern." He leaned closer to the mic. "You're making a mistake. That woman's not your enemy. She's the only reason we're still breathing." The screen went black. He exhaled slowly. His reflection stared back from the dark monitor, older, worn, but not beaten. He picked up the secure phone on his desk and dialed a number from memory. A voice answered, soft and wary. "You shouldn't be calling me, Colonel." "I shouldn't have to," he said. "They're coming for her." The line went quiet. "Then where?" "Heading east," he said. "Ravine Point airstrip. That's where he'll try to lift out if she gets there first." "She'll kill him," the voice finished. "She'll try," said, "but he's not the only one hunting her." He hung up before the voice could answer. Then he reached for his sidearm, holstered it, and walked out into the... He might have been retired, but he wasn't done. Reached the outskirts of Ravine Point by dusk. The airstrip sat between two ridges, an old Cold War relic turned into a private freight hub. One runway, one hangar, one radio tower. And somewhere out there him. She parked a quarter-mile out, hiked the rest on foot. Rain soaked her jacket, her boots sinking in the mud with every step. The world around her felt too quiet, too still. Through her scope she saw movement, 2 trucks, men unloading crates, not soldiers, mercenaries, Ramon's people. Then she saw him. He moved slower now, one arm bound to his side, the other holding a cane. His face was pale, the wound visible even from a distance. But his eyes, the same cold, calculating fire, still burned. "Still alive," she whispered. "Of course you are." She checked her rifle, took a long breath, and let herself feel the weight of it. Not fear, not hate, just inevitability. But then something caught her eye. A glint of metal behind the hangar. Another figure, lean, steady, scanning the field through binoculars. "Colonel," she almost smiled, "you old bastard." She switched to her calm channel. "You really don't know how to stay out of trouble, do you, Colonel?" Static, then his voice. "I told you I'd finish this." She could almost hear his half grin. "You didn't think I'd let you have all the fun, did you?" "Fun isn't the word I'd use," she murmured. "Fair enough, you've got eyes on him." "Yeah, he's wounded but not finished. 2 trucks, 6 men." "I'll take left flank, you take high ground." She paused. "Colonel, if this goes wrong." "It already did," he said. "Let's make it right." The night deepened. Rain turned to mist, wrapping the airstrip in fog. The hum of the generator faded as someone cut the power. That was Q. From the tree line he moved like a shadow, the years falling away with every step. He'd done this 100 times in deserts, jungles, and cities, but never like this. He heard the first shot before he saw it. A man dropped beside one of the trucks, no sound, no warning. Another followed seconds later. 2 down, her voice came through the earpiece. 4 left. Slipped closer, silent. Through the fog, he saw Ramon by the hangar, shouting orders. His voice carried just enough to hear one word that made his blood run cold. "Upload." He glanced toward the hangar doors and saw a satellite uplink case sitting open, lights blinking. Ghost 7 wasn't just a technique anymore. It was data. He was uploading it. Whispered, "He's transmitting the protocol." "Then we stop it," she said. She moved faster now, ghosting between shadows. covered her advance, picking off a guard near the tower. Another shot echoed, hers this time, and Raman spun toward the sound. For a heartbeat, their eyes met through the scope. He smiled. "You learned well," he said softly as if she could hear him, "but you learned from me." He raised his pistol. She fired first. The bullet hit his shoulder, spinning him sideways, but his hand slammed down on the transmitter before he fell. A green light flickered. "Upload complete." "No," whispered. Rushed forward, gun ready, but it was too late. Raman lay bleeding, laughing through the pain. "You can kill me," he gasped, "but the world already has what it needs." "What did you send?" she demanded. He smiled weakly. "A seed, and you, my dear, are the soil." His hand slipped away. The laughter stopped. Stood there staring at the transmitter. The screen glowed faintly. Encrypted uplink, unknown destination. She looked at, eyes hollow. He won. Shook his head. "No, not yet." He crouched beside the device, studying the interface. Signal bounced through a private satellite. "If we move fast, we can intercept before it replicates." "Colonel, this isn't just a file," she said. "He recorded everything. My brain scans, my techniques. He's turning Ghost 7 into an algorithm." His voice hardened. "Then we erase it, all of it." She looked down at Raman's body. "You think that'll make any difference?" He met her gaze. "It's the only difference that ever matters, the one between surrender and defiance." They stared at each other for a long time, two ghosts standing in the wreckage of their own creation. Then slowly she nodded. "Let's burn it." He smiled faintly. "There's the I remember." "Then you remember wrong," she said. "That woman died a long time ago." He looked at her, really looked, and said softly, "Then maybe it's time she came back." They turned toward the hangar as dawn crept over the horizon. Behind them, smoke began to rise, thick, black, final. How do you kill something that's already inside you? The fire from the hangar burned through the fog, painting the wet tarmac in gold and orange. Black smoke rose into the gray morning sky, curling like a ghost with nowhere left to go. The satellite transmitter melted in the flames, metal groaning, glass cracking. It should been over. It should felt over. But it didn't. Morgan stood beside the wreckage, soaked, silent, eyes fixed on the rising smoke. Her face was pale in the dawn light. Behind her, wiped soot from his hands, coughing once. "You did it," he said quietly. "It's gone." She didn't answer. He took a step closer. Her voice, when it came, was calm, too calm. "You saw the light turn green, Colonel. That means it already transmitted. We didn't stop it. We just buried the evidence." He didn't argue. He'd seen the same thing. The moment before the transmitter burned, the small, unmistakable flicker of completion. "Then we find where it went," he said. "We trace the signal." "To what end?" she asked. "To delete something that's already been mirrored, backed up 100 times. You taught me to accept reality as it is, not as we wish it were." "Maybe I was wrong," he said. She finally turned toward him, rain dripping from her hair. "No, Colonel, you were just human." The way she said it made him realize how far apart they drifted, not in distance, but in belief. She crossed into a place beyond vengeance, beyond hope. A place only survivors go. Sighed, "We'll call it in. Washington can trace the uplink through NSA, with luck." She shook her head. "Luck isn't a strategy." Her gaze fell to Raman's body. It lay half buried in the mud, smoke curling from the burned hangar behind it. She walked over, kneeling beside him. His eyes were open, glassy, unblinking. For a moment she just looked at him. Then she reached into his jacket, pulled out a small data drive, and stood. "What's that?" asked. "Insurance," she said, "for both of us." "Insurance or a curse?" "Depends on who uses it." He frowned. "You planning to hand that over to command?" She met his gaze, unwavering. "No, I'm planning to understand it first." They didn't speak for most of the drive back. The old army truck they'd commandeered rattled along the gravel road, tires splashing through puddles. The rain had eased, but the clouds still hung low, smothering the light. Sat in the passenger seat, hands in her lap, the drive clenched tightly in her fist. She kept her eyes on the road ahead, her expression unreadable. Glanced at her. You know what's going to happen now, right? The moment we report this, they'll lock you down. Containment, interrogation, analysis. You'll become a lab subject with a pulse. I know. And you're okay with that. No, she said softly. That's why I'm not reporting it. He slammed the brakes. The truck skidded slightly on the wet road, stopping with a shudder. He turned to her. You're not thinking straight. I'm thinking exactly straight, she said, her tone sharp but steady. They can't be trusted with this. You know what Ghost 7 really is now? It's not a technique, it's a template. A human algorithm. If they decode it, they'll replicate it, manufacture it, mass-produce it. That's speculation, he said. Is it? She turned toward him, eyes fierce. You've seen what they did with half the things you invented. Drones, pattern warfare, predictive combat. You think they'll stop at me? He didn't have an answer. Her voice softened, but it didn't lose its edge. You wrote Ghost 7 to save lives, Colonel. I lived it to survive. They'll use it to control. The words hit harder than any accusation. Finally, he said, then what's your plan? She looked out the window. To disappear. Disappear. Yes, Ghost 7 started with one ghost. It'll end with another. Stared at her, disbelief mixing with a quiet kind of sorrow. You walk away now, you're done. No home, no name, no mission. You'll spend the rest of your life running. She looked at him, her expression softening for the first time. That's what survival is, Colonel, running between the ruins. He exhaled. You can't erase yourself, you're part of this now, whether you like it or not. She smiled faintly. Then I'll make sure the part that survives can't be used. He leaned back, rubbing a hand over his face. You're going to get yourself killed. Maybe, she said, but not before I make sure no one else ever learns to pull the trigger the way I did. That night the truck stopped at an abandoned ranger station near the foothills. The structure was old, half-rotted, roof caved in from a long-forgotten storm, but it was shelter. They built a fire from broken furniture. The flames flickered, lighting the worn faces of two soldiers who had outlived too many wars. Sat by the hearth, the drive between her fingers. The firelight reflected off its metallic surface, making it look alive. Watched her for a long moment before speaking. You're not sleeping. Neither are you. Old habit, he said. Same, she replied. He leaned back in the chair, the wood creaking beneath him. You know, there was a time when I thought precision was the highest form of mercy. She looked up, curious. I believed if you killed clean, you killed right. No suffering, no mess, just order. He exhaled, eyes distant. But order doesn't exist in war, only the illusion of it. She nodded slowly. You can't control chaos. You can only choose how you stand inside it. Exactly, he said, and I stood too long. The fire popped softly between them. She turned the drive in her hand again. He said it was a seed, she murmured. Maybe he wasn't wrong. Meaning? She looked up, meeting his eyes. What if Ghost 7 isn't just a protocol anymore? What if it's something that grows, something that changes whoever understands it? He frowned. You think you've been changed? She smiled faintly. Don't you? He didn't answer, because deep down he knew she was right. Whatever Ghost 7 truly was, math, instinct, trauma, it didn't just exist outside. It lived inside her, and maybe in some smaller way inside him too. After a long silence, he said, if you go dark, they'll hunt you. I know. I can't protect you. I never asked you to. Then what do you want from me? She stared into the fire. To understand. Understand what? She took a slow breath. Why you saved me. That stopped him. He looked into the flames, remembering the dusty compound in Kandahar, the screaming, the gunfire, the body he'd carried through the smoke. You were a civilian. We were ordered to retrieve you. That's not an answer, she said softly. You risked your entire unit for one agent you didn't even know. He was silent for a long time, then quietly, because you reminded me of my daughter. Blinked, you have a daughter. Had, he said. She died in 3-car accident. She was 25. Her voice softened. I didn't know. Few do, he said. But that day in Afghanistan, I saw something in your eyes, not fear, not even pain, just defiance. The same look my daughter had when she joined the Corps against my wishes. He gave a small, sad smile. Maybe saving you was my way of saving her. Looked away, her throat tight. Then maybe I owe her my life. He shook his head. No, you earned it. The fire burned lower, shadows crawling along the walls. Outside, the rain started again, soft, steady, cleansing. Finally, she stood and tossed the drive into the flames. Sat up, what are you doing? Ending it. He stared as the plastic casing melted, sparks hissing in the embers. You sure? He asked quietly. She nodded. If there's one thing I learned from Ghost 7, it's that precision without purpose is just noise. This ends here. The drive cracked, split, and dissolved into molten fragments. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then said, almost to himself, maybe that's what ghosts are, not the dead, but the ones who refuse to repeat the same mistakes. Looked at him, the firelight reflecting in her eyes. Then maybe tonight we both stopped haunting ourselves. He smiled faintly, for now. Outside, the rain grew heavier, washing the soot from the windows, the mud from the steps. By dawn, the fire had burned out. And when woke, the chair across from him was empty. On the table, she'd left his bullet, the same one she'd given him at range. On it, carved with the edge of a knife, were 3 words. Ghosts don't rest. He sat there a long time, turning the bullet in his fingers, listening to the rain. Then with a weary sigh, he said to the empty room, no, they don't. And somewhere far beyond the mountains, a lone figure walked into the rising light, silent, untraceable, free. Why did they summon him to Washington when the questions had already been answered? Colonel James Ghost sat in a windowless room deep beneath the Pentagon. The walls were sterile white, humming faintly with recycled air. Across from him sat 3 men in suits, civilian intelligence, defense, and one from Cyber Command. None of them looked old enough to have seen a battlefield. A digital recorder blinked red on the table between them. The lead interrogator, a gray-haired man with tired eyes, spoke first. Colonel, for the record, state your involvement with the operation at range and the events leading to the destruction of the facility's satellite uplink. Stared at the blinking light, then at the men. I was there. I neutralized a hostile incursion, saved your asses, that enough for the record. The youngest man frowned. Let's avoid grandstanding, Colonel. We're trying to understand exactly what was transmitted from that site before you destroyed it. I already told your people, said, I don't know. The older man leaned forward. But she did, didn't she, Morgan? Silence. They all watched him carefully. Finally said, she's gone. The gray-haired man folded his hands. You expect us to believe that? A woman who executed a protocol that violates every known limit of human precision just vanished. That's exactly what she was trained to do, said. Colonel, another voice chimed in, clipped and impatient. What we're dealing with isn't just a missing asset. The data from that transmission contained biometric resonance patterns, brain mapping frequencies, something our analysts describe as a neural combat sequence. We're talking about the ability to train precision shooters without years of field work. Plug-and-play lethality. His jaw tightened. You're not listening, that's not a system, that's a person. Ghost 7 was never about data, it was about focus born from trauma. You can't upload that into a machine. The youngest analyst smiled thinly. You'd be surprised what we can upload, Colonel. For the first time, leaned forward. His eyes hardened. You're about to play with something you don't understand, and when it turns on you, don't come looking for me. The gray-haired man nodded to the guards. That'll be all for now. They escorted down the hall to a holding room. As the door closed behind him, he whispered to himself, they're going to weaponize her. 3 days later, in a dim operations center across the river, a classified project began. 7 Echo. Rows of technicians sat before glowing monitors, tracing the partial transmission recovered from the burned uplink. Lines of code, fragmented imagery, and buried inside it, something alive. A pulse, a rhythm, a perfect 7-beat sequence that no one could explain. The project lead, Dr. Monroe, watched the data scroll across her screen. We've confirmed it carries a neural signature, her assistant said. It's incomplete, but the pattern repeats itself every 4.6 seconds, almost like a metronome. Can it be replicated? Monroe asked. Not without the missing algorithm, but theoretically, if we had the original subject. We don't, she interrupted. She's gone. Her eyes lingered on the waveform pulsing across the monitor. It looked almost like a heartbeat. Still, she murmured, there's something beautiful about it. Meanwhile was released under watch. He returned to his home outside, a cabin tucked in the woods, quiet, anonymous. The kind of place where ghosts retreat when the world forgets them. For a week he stayed silent. No calls. No visitors. Then one night he woke to a faint noise outside, a crunch of gravel, a shadow against the window. His hand went to the pistol beside his chair before his mind even caught up. He moved silently to the door, opened it an inch, nothing but darkness. Then a whisper, "Easy, Colonel." He froze, he knew that voice. She stepped from the shadows, rain glistening on her jacket. Her hair was shorter now, her face thinner, harder, but her eyes the same fire. "Thought you might be awake." He exhaled, lowering the pistol. "You have a terrible sense of timing." "Always did," she said, stepping inside. The cabin's dim light revealed a woman changed. She carried no rifle this time, no insignia. Just the quiet, coiled stillness of someone who'd lived too long between wars. "They're coming after you," said. "I know." "Then why come here?" "Because you're the only one who understands what they're building." He frowned. "You saw it." "I felt it," she said. "The transmission, it wasn't just data, Colonel. It was me. My neural imprint, my breath, my pulse, my triggers. They're reconstructing it, turning Ghost 7 into a digital echo." He rubbed his temple. "Christ." "I went dark for a week," she continued. "Changed routes every night. But 2 hours ago, I intercepted a burst from a military satellite near Langley. The frequency was identical to the one Raman used." "They're testing it," said. "Worse," she said, "they're sinking it." He met her eyes. "With who?" She hesitated. "Volunteers, or maybe they didn't volunteer." The air between them went still. "What do you need from me?" he asked. She looked around the small cabin. Maps, weapons, old photographs of Marines long gone. Finally she said, "Access. You still have contacts in defense. I need proof. Logs, locations, anything that leads me to the source." He nodded slowly, "And after that?" "I destroy it. You'll never make it out alive." She smiled faintly. "That's been true since Kandahar." 2 nights later they moved. Using an old code still new by heart, they accessed a back-channel server from an abandoned Intel relay near. The system was outdated but unmonitored, perfect for ghosts. The data they found was worse than they imagined. 7 Echo Phase 2. Location, Fort Lancer Research Facility. Status, live neural synchronization trials. Subjects 12. Success rate 83%. Stared at the screen. They're replicating it. Not replicating, said softly. They're breeding it. Her jaw tightened. Then we end it tonight. He shook his head. You can't just walk into a secure military base. You can, she said. He looked at her, and in that moment he saw it again, the defiance that had once made her unbreakable. You're serious. Dead serious. You realize this could start a war inside our own chain of command. She met his eyes. Then it's about time someone did. That night clouds swallowed the moon. The world outside the facility was drenched in fog and rain. Crouched behind a utility truck at the perimeter fence, rain dripping from her hood. Beside her, adjusted the jammer pack strapped to his chest. You sure about this? He asked. She gave him a small smile. You said ghosts don't rest. I'm just living up to it. They cut through the fence silently, slipped inside the outer perimeter. Floodlights swept across the compound in slow arcs. Beyond them, the main lab building glowed faintly blue through the fog. SCOM crackled. Thermals show movement, patrols, 3-man rotation, stick to the east wall. Copy. They moved fast, hugging shadows, avoiding cameras. Every motion was muscle memory. As they neared the lab, faint sounds reached them, muffled cries, machines humming, electronic pulses beating in strange, rhythmic waves. Froze, do you hear that? Listened. The sound wasn't mechanical, it was human, a chorus of heartbeats syncing in perfect unison. Dear God, he whispered, they've already done it. Inside the lab, 12 figures sat in neural harnesses, eyes closed, their bodies twitching to the rhythm of a pulse displayed on the central monitor. 777. His throat tightened. They turned them into mirrors. A technician turned and saw her. Hey, you can't. She fired once. The man fell before the alarm finished ringing. Pulled the power cables, sparks flying. Take the servers, I'll handle the doors. The room erupted in chaos, alarms, shouting, gunfire. Worked fast, sliding the main drive from the console. Then she saw it, her own image flickering on the screen. Her own pulse. Her own name in the code header. Her voice trembled. Colonel, it's me, it's all me. He turned, blood running down his arm from a grazing shot, then shut it down. She slammed the rifle butt into the control board, shattering glass, ripping wires free. Sparks filled the room. The lights dimmed, the hum fading. When it was done, the 12 subjects went limp, alive, unconscious, freed. Silence fell. Stood there shaking, staring at the smoke rising from the console. Touched her shoulder gently. It's over. She looked up at him. No, Colonel, it just changed form. He frowned. What do you mean? She glanced at the data drive she'd taken. Because even if we destroy every copy, I still remember. The lights flickered once. Somewhere deeper in the facility, backup servers spun online. A faint blue glow crawled across the shattered monitors, ghost-like, defiant. And as they fled into the rain, glanced back one last time and whispered the words that would haunt him forever. They don't die, do they? Didn't look back. No, Colonel, they just wait to be remembered. How do you bury something that was never meant to live? The rain had stopped by dawn, but the sky remained bruised, pale light bleeding through clouds that seemed too heavy to move. The Fort Lancer facility burned quietly behind them, flames eating through concrete and steel. The smoke carried the scent of ozone and ash, cold, clean, final. Colonel and Morgan stood at the tree line, drenched, exhausted, half limping from the escape. They didn't speak for a long time. He looked back at the fire. That's government property, he said dryly. She almost smiled. So was I. They started walking down the muddy access road, boots sinking in soft earth. The morning air felt thin, fragile, like it might shatter if either of them spoke too loudly. When they reached the ridge overlooking the valley, stopped. From here she could see everything, the facility's distant glow, the river curling through the woods, the faint shimmer of sunlight breaking through. "Funny," she murmured. "We keep trying to erase the past by burning it." Glanced at her. "Sometimes that's the only way to keep it from coming back." She shook her head. "It always comes back, just changes its name." He sighed, leaning against a fallen tree. "You think what we did here will stop them?" "No," she said, "but maybe it'll slow them down." He nodded slowly. "That's something." She turned to look at him then, and for the first time he saw the weariness beneath the defiance, the small tremor in her hands, the faint hollow under her eyes. "You're hurt," he said. "Just tired." "That's not what I meant." She looked away. "I can feel it, Colonel. Whatever they did in that lab, it's inside me now. My pulse doesn't feel like mine anymore." He frowned. "You were exposed." Maybe I was always exposed." She gave a quiet, sad laugh. "Maybe Ghost 7 was never just a protocol, it was a contagion. I spread it the moment I proved it could be done." His throat tightened. "That's not your fault." "Isn't it?" she whispered. Silence settled between them again. The kind of silence that only soldiers understand, the space between confession and forgiveness. Then said quietly, "You could still come back." She looked at him, disbelief flickering in her eyes. "Come back to what? Interrogation rooms, scientists with scalpels, politicians arguing over who owns my heartbeat." He didn't answer, he didn't need to. They both knew she was right. "I'm done being their ghost," she said softly. "I just want to disappear before the next war wears my face." He stared at her a long time. "And if I try to stop you?" "You won't," she said, meeting his gaze. "You're the only man I've ever met who understands that freedom doesn't come from orders." She took a step closer. "But I need a favor." "Name it." "If they come looking for me, if they use you to find me, lie." He managed a faint smile. "I've been doing that for 40 years. "Then one more won't hurt." By the time night returned, she was gone. She left quietly, like a breath leaving a room. No sound, no goodbye, just her shadow fading between trees and the faint smell of cordite where she'd stood. Didn't follow. He just sat by the campfire, staring into the flames as the stars blinked awake above him. He thought about the first day he saw her, lying in the dust at range, sun cutting across her face, calm in a way that unsettled everyone else. And now the circle had closed. The fire crackled softly, and for a moment he thought he heard her voice again. Sometimes precision isn't control, it's surrender. He closed his eyes. "You were right," he murmured. Weeks passed. The official report labeled Fort Lancer as an industrial fire. No mention of Ghost 7, no mention of Morgan. His name was buried in the appendix under consulting oversight. He was quietly retired again. They gave him a medal he didn't ask for and a pension he didn't need. Then they forgot about him. But not everyone forgot her. Somewhere in the cracks of classified briefings and encrypted memos, whispers began. Of a woman who could shoot between heartbeats. Of a shadow who appeared at crisis zones before any official team arrived. Of a sniper they called Echo. No photo, no record. Just a pattern. 7 shots. 7 seconds. 7 ghosts. One evening drove to Arlington. The air was cool, the trees bare, the rows of white stones endless. He stopped at a grave, marked with a name few remembered anymore. Sarah USMC, 1978-2003. He placed a small coin on the headstone, his reflection flickering in the marble. "I found her," he said quietly. "Not my daughter, but someone who carried what you had, the same fire, the same refusal to break." He smiled faintly. "You would liked her." The wind carried his words away. Then he turned and walked back toward the car. As he opened the door, his phone buzzed once, an untraceable number. He hesitated, then answered, "Yeah." A pause, then a familiar voice, faint and steady. "Colonel." He exhaled. "You shouldn't be calling me." "I'm not," she said. "This line dies in 30 seconds. Where are you?" "Somewhere warm," she said. "Somewhere I don't have to count every sound." "You're safe." She paused for now. He smiled. "Then that's enough." Another silence. Then softly, "They'll come again, Colonel, maybe not for me but for what we built." "I know. Promise me something." "Anything." "When they do, don't stop them. Just teach the next one how to aim." The line clicked. He stared at the phone, listening to the quiet hum before it went dead. Then slowly he smiled. "You always did have the last word." Months later, in a dusty village outside Aleppo, a local defense unit came under siege by insurgents. Pinned down, no reinforcements, no air support. Then, out of nowhere, 7 precise gunshots echoed across the hills. 7 men fell in under a minute. The remaining attackers fled, terrified. When the villagers searched the rooftops, they found nothing. Only a single bullet casing, polished clean. On its side, etched by hand, were 3 words. Ghost 7 lives. Far from that battlefield, back in Virginia, sat on his porch at dusk. The woods were quiet, the sky painted in soft amber. He'd learned to enjoy the silence again. But even in peace, he could still feel her presence, like the echo of a heartbeat that refused to fade. He thought about everything they'd done, everything they'd lost, and everything they'd proven. That strength wasn't born in glory. It was born in the moments when the world forgot you existed. He raised a glass of whiskey toward the fatting sun. "To the ghosts," he said softly, "and to the living they leave behind." A breeze passed through the trees, gentle but deliberate, almost like a whisper. Then somewhere deep in the woods, faint and distant, came a single rifle shot. Clean, sharp, final. He smiled. "That's my girl." The echo lingered a long time after the sound was gone. And when the wind finally carried it away, it left behind only stillness. The kind of stillness that doesn't mean death. It means completion. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And when it does, it becomes legend. The end.